Dick, Melissa, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Happy to do it.
Absolutely. I've known about you guys for a little bit now. Last several years, your name has come up and in conversations with clients. And so I've known about you, and I'm excited to kind of bring you guys on, find out a little bit more about your business, and introduce Anthony to Bridge Loans. So can't wait to get started. But Dick, you're a founding member, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started in this space and a little bit about how Miller Bates kind of began.
Let me do that. And then Melissa, add to it. It segues into anything you might want to add as well.
Cool.
We started, how many years ago did we figure finally, Melissa?
In 2005, officially.
Officially in 2005. Prior to that, I was selling stocks, bonds, mutual funds, so forth. And my clients were of all different types, but some of them were developers. And so back in the early days, a couple of developers came to me and said, would you help us finance a particular project? I did it. Then they came back and wanted more money for a different project. I did that with a couple of friends. And before long, we stepped back and said, wait a minute, we have a business. We need to formalize this and make it an ongoing business. So that's how we got into the hard money lending and the bridge loan lending.
Awesome. And I know from kind of previous conversations, you guys started as Miller Funding Group, right? And now you guys are Miller Bates. What has changed? How have you guys evolved outside of just the name?
So in 2015, we brought on another partner, Dave Bates, and that's where the Bates comes from. And he brought on the ability to leverage technology to make a more streamlined experience for our investors. So previously, when we had a new deal, we would fund it, we would get commitments by calling or emailing our clients one by one to see if they were interested. And now we've got everything on the website. So we post a new deal out there and put all of our due diligence items, notify investors that's there. They take a look. If they're interested, they click right on the website and enter the amount they want to participate. And then once we're ready to close the deal, we send them all the paperwork for electronic signatures. And one of the ways that's really benefited our investors and allowed us to grow, they don't have to be tied to a desk now. They can invest from anywhere in the world. They just need to have their smartphone.
Very cool. So let's dive into kind of what you guys are offering. What are bridge loans or first trust deeds?
So we lend money to borrowers who typically are trying to acquire or improve property. Occasionally, we have borrowers who have property they own free and clear that they can pledge, but they're actually going to use the money for a business opportunity. And that's okay with us too. But then once we get all that information, we work with attorneys and with the title company to secure a first trust deed position. And what that means is we have to have the superior position on the property so that if the borrower doesn't pay us back, we can foreclose and take ownership of the property that we can then liquidate to make our investors whole.
What are typical terms of these loans?
The interest rate is anywhere from 10 to 12%. And that what we can charge is really a function of market competition. We'll charge as much as we can without losing out on the deal. And then the duration, we typically do up to 1 year original period with up to another year of extensions. And that can be broken up. Sometimes it's 6 months with 2 6-month extensions, but typically the max duration will go is 2 years.
Okay. Are they making payments during this time?
They're making interest payments, and we typically pre-fund that. So we'll actually include that in the note, the first original term of interest. So if it's originally a 1-year loan, we'll include 1 year worth of interest. So we know our investors will get interest for at least that original period. And one of the things I should mention about that, we require a loan to value ratio, an LTV of 50 to 65%. And that includes the interest reserve. So if you took that out, it's actually a much lower LTV. And that's just to give us margins in case we need to foreclose.
And but I ought to chime in. LTV is loan to value.
Cameron was just going to ask what LTV stood for. So thank you, Dick.
Thanks, Dick. You did make me ask. So what I'm hearing is a developer will come and approach you guys, right?
Mhm.
You guys are lending. 12% sounds pretty high. How come they're not going to a traditional bank?
Banks take a really long time, and they
Yeah.
kind of give you the runaround. When you come to us, you're dealing right with the decision makers. We can move a lot quicker, and we are asset-based lenders. So our primary concern and our primary evaluation is based on the property. So that's helpful if someone maybe doesn't have fantastic credit or, a lot of liquid income, but they have a great piece of property.
And you said 50 to 65% loan to value. Is that typical in your industry? Is that low? Is that high? How does that compare with others?
I would say it's actually low because we end up having to turn quite a few loans away because they want us to loan 75, 80, 90%, and we just won't do it.
Awesome. How are you guys? You said you turned some of these loans away. How do you guys vet somebody that comes to you and says, hey, I want X number, I want a loan? And what is the typical loan that you guys are putting out?
The typical loan, you mean as far as amount?
Yeah. How much?
Yeah, it varies a lot. Typically, I would say our sweet spot is really 2 to 3 million, but we've done up to 7, close to 8 million. And we won't go below 500,000. Sometimes people will come to us and they just need, 150, 200,000. And unfortunately, that's not worth the cost on our end. So we've set a $500,000 minimum.
Awesome.
Let me interject something. You
Yeah.
mentioned something just a minute ago that I think is really relevant. That 50 to 65%, we are on the low end, meaning LTV wise in the industry. That also dictates the foreclosure rate. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a few minutes. But because of that, we have fewer foreclosures than our competition.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 85 or 90%, there's not a lot of incentive for a person to stay in the property. It's easy to walk away. Whereas if they have 40% or so equity, they're less likely to walk away from the property.
Yeah.
Great point. Now, these properties using for what are people using these loans for?
Usually it is to acquire or improve a piece of property. Often they'll have it tied up and then we'll come in and provide the funds so that they can actually close. We do have a couple of investors that they like to pursue unrelated business opportunities, and they own various properties free and clear. So they'll come to us and say, I need 2 million to buy a company or to do something with. Can I borrow money from you? And then I will put up this commercial land I've got. And that's great. That works for us.
Okay. So sometimes it's already an existing property, but sometimes it's a property that's being rehabbed or improved. Is that correct?
Or they've got to get the zoning changed or the entitlements done or some improvements in. And they need to do that before they can obtain longer term bank financing. So and that's one of the reasons we're called bridge loans, is we provide that little bridge until they can get permanent financing.
Now, let's say somebody is trying to rehab or improve a piece of property. That appraisal there, is that on like the current cost of the property or with the intended improvements?
Typically, we value the property on its current value. The only way we will provide a valuation on its future value is if the money to get to that point is escrowed with us. So, for example, if they need to do some work on the property and it's going to cost $1 million, we will value it as such, as if the work's done, but only if we hold the $1 million and we're releasing the funds directly to their vendors as work is completed.
Okay.
You guys are located in Utah. Are you lending locally, nationally? What does your market look like?
We're primarily on the West Coast, or the western part of the United States. We do a lot of business in Utah because that's where we are, but we also loan in, Idaho, Texas, Colorado, all the western states.
And did you guys have new applications coming in all the time? Is it kind of the same group of developers or investors? What does that look like?
It's a mix of both. We just did a loan a couple of weeks ago with a borrower that it was his 18th loan with us. So we've been lending to him since 2013, so almost 10 years. So we've got a handful of repeat borrowers that we've got great relationships with, and they keep coming back to us, but we're always out there looking for new borrowers too. So
just a kind of an interesting side note, of the applications for loans, we probably go through 20, Melissa, to get one.
Oh, yeah.
So we say no to about 19 out of 20.
Yeah. Sometimes it's for reasons as simple as it's out of our region. But a lot of times it's the LTV doesn't work, or, unfortunately, occasionally we have to turn them down because we can't value that type of property. It's in a really remote location or something like that, where our underwriters just feel like they couldn't get a confident valuation on it.
Now, with most of these properties, are they commercial or are they residential?
Primarily commercial.
Okay. Now, I know sometimes I've seen where, particularly in California, where they will, it might be a home, but it's so expensive and it's going to be used as a rental that's considered commercial. So are we, we're not talking residential properties, we're talking true commercial properties?
You know what, Anthony, let me correct that. We do loan on residential land. What I really should have said, we don't loan on homes.
Okay.
Our attorney is very thorough and cautious, and he's just advised us, because of mortgage laws, to stay away from homes. But we will loan on residential land, and we actually do quite a bit of that.
Okay. I do like that you guys have been around before the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and honestly, we believe we're in one now. And how was it during that time? I mean, it had to be very difficult. And what do you see kind of happening the next year or two?
I will say that time was ugly. Honestly, it was not fun. We foreclosed a lot, and borrowers just threw up their hands and walked away. And so we ended up owning a lot of properties, and that's not what we want to do. We've got that foreclosure ability as a safety measure, but we don't want to own their property. We want to get our money back and put it into the next deal. So that wasn't fun, owning so many properties and trying to figure out how to liquidate them. I hear what you're saying about the recession, and I agree that if we're not in one now, we will be soon. Mm-hmm. But I think the situation's different. Right now, there is more. There's not enough supply, and the fundamentals are still strong. Back then there was so much risky lending, and people were getting into homes and all sorts of properties at way too high LTVs. Also, I think properties were just being overvalued. So when you were deciding how much to loan, you were basing it on a number that may not have been accurate. I don't think that's the situation now. I think as we go into a recession, I think we'll see correction in prices. I don't anticipate a crash. Dick, how do you feel? Do you have anything to add to that?
Anthony, I think it's a great question. One of the things that I've noticed, and I agree with you, whether we have the government announcing that it's a recession, it's a recession. Yeah. We are in the middle of one. What happens to us during a recession, which is really interesting, banks stop lending on some things we loan on. For instance, they won't loan on raw land. They'll loan on approved, not improved, but approved property. So if we have a borrower that's going to take the raw land, entitle it, get it ready to develop, then a bank will loan on it. So all of a sudden, some of the banks are out of the market. So we're finding very good loans, high quality loans that we normally wouldn't get because of the bank's lack of interest in them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What I don't know if you guys know, interest rates are kind of going up a little. I don't know if you guys heard that. On the to be honest, I would think 10 to 12% would have been fair probably 3 or 4 years ago. I would expect that these interest rates would be going up. Am I?
And let me deal with that, Melissa, because I've historical perspective. Anthony, I think you're exactly right. I think in the next few months, we'll see that. As Melissa mentioned earlier, right now, there are a lot of people that shouldn't be in our industry doing it. And I hate to use the word mom and pop, but it's kind of that type of a scenario where they're not really educated. They're making bad decisions, but they're charging 10%. So to be competitive, as Melissa said, we've had to lower our rates a little bit. There's no question in my mind that in the next 6 months, we'll be 12, 13, 14%.
Okay.
So thanks for going through that kind of overview. What does it look like from the investor's point of view, right? We just talked about, right, who's going to approach you guys and borrow this money. But if somebody approaches you guys with 100,000 or whatever the minimums are, maybe you can touch on that and then kind of walk us through the process of the initial investment, the return on capital, and then typically what people do. Do they stick around for the first one and leave? Do they roll it over? What does that look like?
Okay. First of all, we don't solicit business. All of our investors come through referrals. And once a referral is made, I have a conversation with that investor. I want to make sure they understand what this investment is. They understand the risks. Ideally, they've had some experience with real estate and with other types of investments so that they have the sophistication to make the decision. So I initially have that conversation and sort of vet them and also give them the opportunity to vet us. We try to be as transparent as possible. So I'll provide whatever information they want. I often send them copies of documents from past loans, things like that, so that they have a full picture of what we do. After that, then I'll usually follow up with another email or a phone call, just to have another touch point with them, make sure they're comfortable with the process, see if they have any questions. Once they are ready to become an investor, they sign up on the website and they don't have to give any like social security numbers or anything at that point. They just give us like their email address, telephone number, address, and then that gets them into the website so that as we post new loans, they can see all that information. So when we post a new loan, I send out a mass email saying, hey, check the website. There's a new opportunity to review. And if you're interested, you can commit to participate. So they'll log on, and we always have a brief one-page summary of the deal. And then we'll also include the valuation paperwork. Usually it's a broker price opinion report. If we've got an appraisal, we'll put that up there as well. Plat maps, title report, all the information that we've used to evaluate the loan, we then provide for investors to look at. And then they decide if they want to commit. Dick, were you going to interject something?
Yes, just a quick comment. One of the things we believe in because of our background is diversification. So if someone comes to us and says, I want to invest $500,000, we will suggest to them, do it in several transactions. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because we never know from the outset which one is going to be the most profitable loan or problem loan. You just don't know. So our recommendation is always diversify. So
Yes.
That goes back to part of the answer to your question. Also, I don't know that I can't even remember a person that did one loan with us and did not do others. I don't remember that.
No, most of our investors are repeat borrowers. Some get into every single deal. Some, may do a couple deals a year, but as soon as something pays off, they'll reinvest it into something new. And before I forget, you asked about the minimum. So we require $50,000 per loan.
Okay.
Okay.
How many loans do you guys have outstanding typically a year? You said that the investors are kind of picking and choosing. How many do you have a year? And the question I'm thinking is that syndications, typically they open a syndication. It could take months and months before that investment actually starts paying off. What's the timeline in your guys's?
Good question.
Thanks.
So first of all, your first question, we've got right now about 17 loans that are active.
Okay.
We typically do a little more than one a month. So 14, 15, 16 a year, something in that range. And then, so right now with those 17 loans, we have just over 40 million that's been deployed. And we're actually getting ready to close another loan for another about 4.5 million. So that number will be going up. And as far as the lifespan, the investors during the course, and I believe you asked this earlier, and I didn't address it, but in the loans pay out interest monthly. So they don't get their principal until maturity, but each month they're getting their interest, which is nice. I think that's one of the ways that investors stay engaged. You know, they're seeing that come into their bank account every month and getting that notification saying, we just put $1,000 into your account. So I think that helps keep them engaged.
When I get an email that says, hey, there's an offering here, how quickly do I need to act, right? What's the run up to the investment until I get cash flow?
It depends on a few factors as far as how quickly you need to act. If we fund several deals back to back, you know, people don't have as much liquidity because they've already participated. So sometimes the deal may take a couple of days to fully.
I think she got stuck for some.
Oh, actually, Dick, she was fine on our end.
Oh, okay. So some deals may take a couple of days, but the deals that are, I mentioned earlier, that sweet spot, 2 to 3 million, a deal that's 2 to 3 million and 12% is going to fill in minutes. Those go really quick. And so once we've got all the commitments, I'll send an email out to investors and say, this is the target closing date. It's usually within a few days. Here's our wiring instructions. Here's your note participation agreement. Let me know if you have any questions, and they'll send us their funds by the date I've provided. And then that starts the clock ticking. So 1 month later, and then every month on that anniversary date, they'll get their interest payment.
Okay. Now in this deal, you guys are making some money off this deal, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Is it points or how's that working?
It is points. We call it a loan servicing fee, and we charge that to the borrower. So 100% of the interest we pass on to investors, and then the borrower pays us a loan servicing fee that varies depending on the term, the duration of the loan. Obviously, we've got to charge a little more if it's a year loan versus a 3-month loan. Okay.
Is there a prepayment penalty?
No.
Okay. All right. Is there a minimum interest that if you do, I'm going to loan you this for a year, is there a minimum interest they need to pay?
Well, only as far as rate. We won't go below 10%. We've experimented with that a little bit. We've had some loan requests that were very, very, they were lower risk than normal. And so we presented them to investors, but they were at 8-9%, and investors said, no, that doesn't interest us. So we've learned that 10% is really our minimum rate we can charge.
How about in regards to the time frame? If they say I need the money for a year, could they come back and just pay it off in 2 months?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen, but yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we find, and this is why we include extensions often, borrowers.
Looks like
when she comes back, we'll have her just.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you,
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
She is frozen. Melissa, you're about to drop some great wisdom, but you froze. Do you mind backing it up a little bit?
Dick mentioned that borrowers can pay it off at any point, but they usually don't pay it off early. Mm-hmm. And I was just making the point that borrowers are typically optimistic. They think they can do things a lot quicker than they really can. So if they say they need 12 months, in all likelihood, they need 18 months. So we'll include extensions because we want them to succeed. As long as it doesn't harm our investors, we want the borrower to be able to succeed so they can come back and keep borrowing money from us on deals.
I'm assuming that we can use a self-directed IRA to invest in this.
Uh-huh.
Great.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we do have some limits. I believe it's about 20% of the funds for a deal can come from self-directed IRAs. So we do have some limits, but we've never bumped up against that.
Okay. Now, is this considered a security as far as like as an investment? I know that can be very technical.
Yeah, it's an exempt security.
Okay.
And we covered something a few minutes ago, but let me just bring it up again. We only deal with sophisticated, accredited investors. Therefore, you can get an exemption for the kinds of things we do. We don't bump against that issue of non-accredited people. We just don't allow that.
Okay. Could you mind giving Cameron an idea of what an accredited investor means?
I just saw that coming.
Oh, you know that
I
was
saw
coming.
that, yeah.
That was too easy.
Yeah.
So when someone signs up on our website, they have to answer 3 questions. One is about their net worth, which has to be over $1 million, excluding their personal residence.
Okay.
They have to have either a personal income of $200,000 or a household income of $300,000, and they have to click a box self-certifying that they have the experience and knowledge to make these type of investment decisions. So that's how they self-proclaim that they are accredited investors.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
What I'm hearing is that this market is going to, I'm sure it's competitive as it is, but it's going to get more competitive moving forward. What would you guys say kind of separates you guys? What do you guys do differently?
One of the big things we do differently is we don't pool our loans. And I think that's what often happens with Ponzi schemes. People pool their funds, they guarantee a rate, so then they have to, borrow from Peter to pay Paul. We don't do that. Each deal stands alone. We encourage investors to make an informed decision with each one. We encourage them to have their own due diligence process. So they may say, I will only loan on these types of properties or in these states, or, we encourage our investors to be discerning and to make a decision on each one. And because each one stands alone, if one deal struggles, it doesn't affect the other deals. So there's no pressure on our end to do anything unethical to hide that or to make things work. We're very transparent. We inform investors. This borrower was unable to fulfill his obligations. We're starting the foreclosure process. You won't earn interest anymore, but once we sell the property, you'll get your pro rata share of the proceeds.
Okay.
Great segue. So I was going to ask what the foreclosure process does look like.
Well, first thing it starts is with a notice of default. And often that triggers the borrower to figure something out. And so they'll often, before we even foreclose, just that notice of default will have them kick it into gear, and they'll be able to bring in payments and cure the loan. So we don't even have to go to the foreclosure. If we do have to go to foreclosure, it's a little different in each state. In Utah, they have a 90-day window after we file the notice of default where they can try to cure it. If they're unable to do so, we can schedule the foreclosure sale for 30 days later. And it's quite literally on the steps of the courthouse. And our attorney presents the situation. And if anyone's there to bid on it, they can buy the property for what we're owed. That doesn't typically happen. Typically, we end up owning the property, and then we will research the best liquidation options. We'll take them to our investors and say, these are the different options we have right now. Let us know what your wishes would be. And we take into account what the majority of the investors want us to do. Typically, that's to hire a realtor, sell the property. Occasionally, it may be like with the Great Recession, a lot of those properties our investors wanted to sit on for a while and see if the market would improve.
And let me clarify something too that Melissa brought up. those 90 and 30-day periods of time are very interesting. During the 90-day period of time, they can actually bring the money in to make the loan current. So let's suppose that taxes or whatever else might be owed. If they bring those things current, then they can go forward. After the 90 days, they can no longer bring the loan current. They have to pay the whole thing off. Now,
okay.
It is going into that first 90 days. Often, the whole amount is due anyway. So we're dealing with semantics. The 90 days, you have to pay it off in full. After the 30 days, you have to pay it off in full because the whole thing is due. The whole amount is due. But during that 90 days, it's a little unusual. They can cure it.
Okay. Which would be okay. That's kind of what we'd wanted.
That's exactly what we prefer that.
I was just going to say, you guys probably don't prefer a foreclosure, obviously, right? You guys are looking.
No. We view it as a last resort. Yeah.
You mentioned kind of who's approaching you to borrow, but who's typically approaching you to invest, right? What is that? I'm looking for the word.
Avatar,
yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Who's investing with you guys?
Because we require them to be accredited, they're typically a little older, I would say 40s, 50s and on.
Okay, Melissa, so are you saying 40s or older?
As someone
I just turned 50. 40s? And Dick, I'm feeling Dick's a little older than me. He's got gray hair.
But thank you. Anthony, to me, a 40-year-old is really young.
Yeah, I agree.
Apparently not to Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that because I'm right in the middle of my 40s. So apparently I'm an old lady.
Yeah.
But so they're typically people that have had a healthy career and acquired wealth. A lot of times they're business owners, doctors. We actually have quite a number that are engineers. But they're people that have been investing for a while and have the liquidity and experience to participate in these transactions.
If someone's brand new to kind of looking at bridge loans and this whole idea, what would you say to them? What should they know?
Well, I think an important part is that every loan is secured by a first trust deed on real estate. I think that's key. I also think they should understand that there is always the risk of foreclosure. We encourage people to only use money that they can have tied up for a long term. I don't want anyone investing money with us that they need to pay their monthly bills because there is a chance we'll foreclose and we'll end up owning property. So those are some of the key things. The interest rates, obviously, we got to share those because that's the hook.
Yeah.
And the LTV, I think that's something that sets us apart is our low LTV.
Awesome. So if somebody's listening, what do they need to do? They need to call us, or can they reach out to you guys directly? How does that work?
Don't call you.
Yeah.
The best bet would be probably to go to our website, and we've got a lot of information there. All of our contact information is there, and that's just millerbates.com. Or they could email me directly, melissa.miller@millerbates.com. I am the first person you'll interact with, whether you're a borrower or an investor. I sort of start that process. If you're a borrower, I then once I've vetted the deal preliminarily, I'll pass that on to our 2 full-time in-house underwriters. If you're an investor, you'll be working with me through the whole process.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time today to kind of share what you guys do up there in Utah. And hopefully we'll have kind of both, right? If I'm hearing it right, we got kind of 2 opportunities. One, if somebody potentially wants to invest with you, and then also if somebody was actually looking to borrow some money to develop something. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yes, and we are always looking for loans. So we would love to hear from people that have some financing needs and may fit our model.
And thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Really appreciate you jumping on here. And the information that you just shared as far as the contact information, we'll make sure we put that in the show notes so they can reach out to you guys.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, and go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
Thank you very much. You too.